Oh, please do bring yourself closer. Everyone in this entire event has bathed today, so you can get closer. It's totally fine. You are amongst the people with ADD, so it's okay if you have to leave. We understand. Who was not here in the earlier sessions, or the first or second or third session today? Anyone a newbie to this room? Awesome. You missed nudity, cream cheese, good texture, and poop. Not even joking. My name is Chris Brogan. I am president of a company called Human Business Works. I tend to work mostly with either bigger companies or with agencies in helping do stuff like amplify the human digital channel, which is in the big sales cycle. We work on the customer acquisition part and the community relations part. What we're doing today is we're talking a lot about where the rubber meets the road on where social and marketing and advertising connect. What that means is we're sort of trying to eliminate some of the buzzwords. We're trying to see how many times people don't use the word engagement, don't use join the conversation, don't use words like find the influencer. We're trying to go beyond the idea that it's good to put a little F, a little T, and a little YouTube logo in the bottom right of an ad and call that social. Sorry if you've done that. I understand and I feel your pain. My announcement in the earlier part of the day, though, is that the equivalent of putting a little FT in YouTube on the bottom of a channel is like going up to a hot girl at a bar and saying, "Hey, call me later," and she looks down and there's a drawing of a phone. It's a little bit more to social than just the logo, it turns out. We have quite an interesting assortment of folks this afternoon, and it's the fullest of the panel. So for those of you who hadn't been here earlier today, this is like finishing with a bang. It is the money shot. It is the explosion scene. It is tigers jumping through flaming hoops. And perhaps not. But it's a very eclectic group, I will say, myself notwithstanding. But we have variations, from some different brands, different agencies, a PR guy, and someone who flew all the way from Australia. So earlier in the second session, we mentioned that if you had no idea what Dave Lindenberry said because he might have spoken a little fast, don't worry, we'd play it back on tape half speed. Michelle Evans, I've volunteered to translate all her Australian words later, so if you don't understand her, it's perfectly okay, I'll help. I also know sign language. First off, I'm going to bring up Dave Rosenberg, who's from LBI. He's the Director of Innovation, and he's going to talk a little bit on behalf of Sony Ericsson's Xperia Studio and all that. Dave, come right on up. You'll find that we're a loosely knit group. We're going to do quick 10-minute presentations and get some information. Everything is tweetable, please, and nothing is proprietary, I believe. So here's Dave.
Thank you, Chris. Thank you all. So I'm Dave Rosenberg from LBI. We're a marketing and technology agency, and our client, Sony Ericsson. What I would like to do before I get going, and I know this will be a little bit rhetorical, but how many of you all have posted on Facebook today? And in any way, shape, or form? How many on Twitter? How many on Google+? That's still pretty good. Now, how many felt that you needed sort of permission to do that or had to prove your worthiness in order to make those posts? None of you. Well, actually, brands have to think about that a lot. And that's going to be the essence of my conversation with you guys today. So the title of the panel is Turning Like into Love. How do you make people love you on Google+, Twitter, and Facebook? But actually, what I want to talk about is how to achieve brand sociability. Because that is going to be the key for you to have your brand work within that realm successfully. So that will be the theme as we go through. And the way I'm going to do that is actually show you a case first and then talk a little bit about the levers of how to do that. So Sony Ericsson launching a new handset called Xperia in the US and around the world. Excuse me. Very tough to do in a very crowded marketplace, right? There's so much noise. So we had to look at the situation and say, feature set, or shall we lean into the legacy of Sony in entertainment? And that felt very social to us as a way. But rather than me talk about it, let me show you the case and then we'll chat.
Xperia line of smartphones to the masses. We knew we would have to first convince the people who influence the masses. Hackers, artists, and innovators. People who weren't just experts in their fields, but came with a core audience of fans and followers. We didn't set out to create an ad campaign. Instead, we built a real-world proving ground where the world's most entertaining phone was put to the test by the very people who consume, create, and share the best content on the web. We called it Xperia Studio, and it quickly became a hub for the internet's most exciting digital art and experimentation.
The idea of this application is trying to show you that which you can't see. It's trying to show you that which is invisible.
We paired up with programmers, athletes, musicians, filmmakers, and scientists to push the limits of Xperia smartphones and remake reality.
Gives us a chance to play and experiment. Now we have some phones and it's great processing power in your hands. So it's a new technology and it's exciting to play with it.
By collaborating this way, we ensured an attentive, engaged audience for every project release. News of Xperia Studio was shared quickly across Twitter, Facebook, and Google+, with contributions from our collaborators, as their fans became fans of the brand. Our closest followers joined our private network, and sharing with a growing Facebook community of 6 million, our high-quality content earned hundreds of thousands of contextual views. Press hits in major media outlets like Gizmodo, Engadget, and ESPN further fueled the fire. It wasn't advertising, it was news.
It gave me access to 7 great phones, to use them as a cluster for this 360 video. Nobody has done this before.
But Xperia Studio had also changed the way we see our smartphones, opened up new possibilities for the technology we use every day. And this is just the beginning.
So, of course, with every great case, we have to talk a little bit about the numbers. It's pretty new. We just launched maybe 2 months ago. And we've already seen huge growth in a fairly established Sony Ericsson fan base, but the numbers have spiked. We're up around 6 million people who like our brand, and a lot of them come from the contributors themselves bringing their audiences to the table, to Sony Ericsson, through the content. We also have this social CRM platform. It's a way for us to actually have a closer relationship, even using Facebook, in order to give real people the opportunity to co-create with us, which is very important to us, both from how we behave, but also from a brand perspective. And we see this sort of evolving beyond what we're doing into editorial. And so while you've seen that we have made it into Engadget and Wired, and we're really proud of all that, one of the things that we're most proud of is the fact that it's made its way into ESPN, a lifestyle brand. And when we can make that crossover socially, where the content we create with these influencers is making its way into mainstream, then we're helping Sony achieve their goal of sort of reaching the mass. So let's talk about how do you do that. So we call that at LBI, as well as just, feels right as a person, 4 levers to brand sociability. So the first one is you need to start with an inherently sociable idea. Second one is, and I'm going to get into depth on these in a minute, is to commit to a brand point of view and have a voice for that brand. The third one is to leverage current themes or even memes to create currency or relevancy for the brand. And the fourth is to be proactive and responsive in your mechanical sort of operations, but it runs even deeper than that. So let's talk about the first one. The first one is having a sociable idea. So remaking reality, or reality remade, is a question or a challenge to the world. How can we look at the world every day differently, right? And we looked at with the influencers that we picked, how do they see it through the lens of the handsets? How can they change the way they look, whether they're a hacker, an athlete, an artist, a musician? So that is a very sociable idea. It doesn't stop with a period. It is a very open-ended thought versus sticking your, as Chris said, YouTube video commercial up there and hoping it goes viral. That's not a sociable idea. So having a sociable idea starts way upstream. The second point I want to talk about is having a point, actually a point of view. And this is critical because just like if Judith over here in the audience has a friend named Mary who is very funny, but John who is very serious, she'll get to know Mary very well and turn to Mary and want to, when she needs lighthearted fun, she'll have a relationship with that on that level. While John is very serious and have those in-depth chats. That's how we become connected to people, is by understanding their characteristics and wanting to get to know them. Same for brands. And in fact, when a brand has a consistent point of view and how it represents itself, not just out to the world and what it says, but what it does, people can come to expect from that brand a relationship and that continued relationship. And I know where to turn when I want that kind of, whether it be content or discussion or what have you. That's why we return. Leveraging relevant themes is also really important because oftentimes brands they really want you to talk about the brand the way they want to be spoken about. But frankly, people don't want to talk about brands in that way. They want to talk about the things they're interested in. So where is that point of intersection where people we can find common ground with them? And that's how we used sort of these influencers through breakthrough influencers, people who hadn't quite hit the huge mainstream nor were just starting out. And we verticalized them into the artists, the hackers, the musicians, and really kind of found a way we know that people self-select their kind of content. And we found a broad range of content for them to self-select into. And when we have that quality and variety of content, that allows us to have a very sort of sociable behavior with content that people can choose. Okay, so if you take the idea that we have Josh Peak over here, who's an astronomer at Columbia University who developed an Android app on the Sony Xperia platform, or you have Jorgen, who helped this particular mountain biker in Moab create a real-time 360 video shot with a strung together thing created with a 3D printer, thing being technology code, that would allow you to see it. It doesn't matter to us because this is what's important. We know this from what people are already talking about online. Third is to be proactive and responsive. And yes, we have an editorial calendar that we know we need to follow and we want to follow, but stuff happens in life and people are talking with us and we're having those conversations. And this is the chance to really use your point of view, whether it be on your editorial calendar or responding to what people have to say. So whether you're into surfing, into sports, or whatever the thing is that you really gravitated to in this content, or you're into the phones, which, by the way, when you have a product on Facebook that people like, they really actually like your product and make no apologies for having discussions. But what's interesting here is we had product discussions, again, through the lens of how these influencers or these people, these artists, saw it. So it really brought the discussions around product to a new level as well, which I think was very satisfying. So in conclusion, the 4 levers, right? Have a sociable idea up front. It's hard to do, but think about it. It is not a period. It tends to be a question or a challenge. Number 2, commit to a brand point of view or a voice. Have something that you stand for, and people come to know that that's who you are as a brand. And 3, leverage relevant themes and culture. Don't try to make everybody talk about you the way you think you need to be spoken about. Understand people and diversify the content you have out there because people do self-select. And last but not least, being proactive in knowing how you want to represent yourself out there, but having the flexibility to be responsive as well. So that kind of concludes it from the short presentation here, but look forward to if there's Q&A at the end, we'll chat more. But thank you very much.
Dave Rosenberg, everyone from LBI. There's a lot about that I would love to comment on. We just have a really tight schedule, but the key takeaway for me in that whole thing was make your buyer the hero. That video is all about making your buyer the hero and making them the story. And it's a way better way to show off a product is have the people do the work instead of make it how awesome your product is. Kirsten and Colin, why don't you come on up? And this is Kirsten Mitten, is it Rivas? Am I pronouncing it right? Okay. And Colin Westcott Pitt. I'm Christopher Edward Brogan, if we're going with all 3 names. And Kirsten is from the Euro, I always get it wrong, RSCG. And Colin is from Heineken and Gang. So we get to learn about the most interesting man in the world.
Bravo. Full service MC. Okay. Words carry weight that would break a less interesting man's jaw. He's won trophies for his game face alone. He bowls overhand. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis. Stay thirsty, my friends.
He is the life of parties he has never attended. If he were to punch you in the face, you would have to fight off the strong urge to thank him. Sharks have a week dedicated to him. He is the most interesting man in the world.
I don't always drink beer, but when I do, I prefer Dos Equis. Stay thirsty, my friends.
So, how many of you know and potentially love that campaign? How many of you like us on Facebook? Oh, cool. If you want to do it now, that's fine. Feel free. But we have over 1 million likes on Facebook, and it's not because Colin and I come and sit up here and say interesting things and share the work, which obviously there's a whole bunch of stuff even beyond this. But it's because of everything we do in an effort to really stay true to the brand and really stay true to the idea. And that's kind of what we wanted to center our presentation around today and kind of share with you some of the things that we do to make sure that we deliver that really consistently and seamlessly. I think first, before we do that, we want to kind of give you a bit of context, maybe a bit of background. I mean, this is obviously, as everybody would expect, a super cluttered category. A lot of brands, a lot of spending, a lot of messaging. And we were this tiny little brand from Mexico and trying to figure out how to break through. And it isn't always easy to do, but it starts with having a really clear sort of plan of where you want to go. And what we obviously had to do was take a look at the target. Who are we talking to? Because inherently, if everybody's sort of seeing on average, 3,000 messages, these guys are probably seeing even more. They're inherently a social group and inherently a social category. And so it was really important that we figure out how to kind of connect in the right way. I mean, these guys, as evidenced by this picture, they're looking for fun. They're looking for funny. They're looking for, to be kind of the life of the party. Like, who doesn't want to be that? But that's where it got interesting because, in fact, if you observed them, they weren't the life of the party, but they were really trying hard to be. And what it turned out was they had this fear, this terrible sort of anxiousness about being perceived as boring. And my friend Colin here has a shirt that says what we think about that. And maybe at some point I'll take my fur vest off and you'll see mine as well. But with all of this, it's a bit much. So the main point, obviously, is that we found that these guys felt like, oh my God, I don't want to be boring. Being boring really sucks. And so we saw that as an opportunity for us to kind of step in and say, well, if there's this perception and we're this brand that believes in doing things that are more interesting, then together you sort of share this philosophy that we're going to help you live more interesting lives. And there needs to be a couple of kind of layers to that, the way that we do it. I mean, the first is the one we just shared, which is the man. Here's this aspirational guy that shows you what kind of the most ultimate interesting life could be. It's intentionally not the guy on the right. It's someone who we thought could be aspirational, believable. You believe that he does these interesting things, that he's had that interesting life, and more importantly, that you relate to him. And that was a really interesting thing for us. So I think you were just talking about the importance of starting with a highly sociable idea. We really felt like this, for this category, for this target, inherently was. He's the beginning of that, and then where we kind of took it from there is what we wanted to share with you today.
Thank you, Kirsten. Good afternoon, everybody. So, you've heard a little bit of the story. We had absolutely, well, compared to most people, very little money. We had a brand that virtually nobody had heard of, and those that had heard of it couldn't even pronounce it properly. Okay? We had a little bit of knowledge about the consumer, and that was that they really didn't like to be seen as boring. but they didn't really want to share that with us, so we're not sure how important that was. And we also had this little idea that having a life more interesting might be quite a cool thing to talk about, but we were not really sure about whether that would resonate or not. So lots of kind of problems. And then just to add to that, and Kirsten touched on it before, we just cast as our brand representative a guy who broke every single rule of the beer industry on what was supposed to be aspirational. And quite frankly, a lot of our key customers, who are our beer distributors, felt that we had made absolutely the wrong choice in casting a 70-year-old guy as our key kind of spokesperson. So at this point, as you can imagine, things in the Heineken offices were a little bit tense. We weren't really sure what was going to happen. So what did happen? Well, amazingly, and we're thrilled about it, the whole bloody thing took off. We pretty much doubled our growth rate in every year since the campaign has been out. We've grown market share virtually every single year. We have won a bunch of awards, and we're actually thrilled. The most recent one was a Best Beer Brand of the Year award from our retail partners, so we like that the most. I'm sorry, advertising community, but we love the retailers. And we're actually the fastest growing import Dos Equis lager in the US beer market. So things have turned out pretty well. But then at that point, we decided to turn our thoughts to digital. Now, for all of us on the Dos Equis team, and Kirsten, I'm sure, will support this, there is one guiding thought that has kept us going through our thoughts on digital. And it's the kind of thought that really gets you out of bed in the morning and makes you realize that working on Dos Equis is really a once-in-a-lifetime experience. This single thought drives us and inspires us and makes us think we can go further than we've ever gone before. You know what that thought is? Don't screw it up now. Okay, so this was what was ahead of us, and I think one of the things we'll say is that luckily for us, we haven't screwed it up. As Kirsten mentioned, we're the first beer brand in the world to get 1 million likes on Facebook, and since we achieved that a year ago, we've actually added another 500,000 likes to our page. So we're really thrilled about that. We also have one of the highest engagement rates in the industry on Facebook. And I think most importantly for us, we've actually provided in the digital space the opportunity for consumers to talk about how they can lead more interesting lives. And for Dos Equis, we're just thrilled and really humbled to be part of that conversation. So what we thought we'd do today is just give you a little bit of a peek under the tent as to why we think we haven't actually screwed up the Dos Equis promise in the digital space. So we'll take you through 7 reasons why we don't think we have. This is great partnership, by the way, Kirsten. I mean, this is just, if everything worked like this, it would be just fantastic, wouldn't it? So, reason number 1, think before you act. We just launched this amazing character. Women loved him, men wanted to be him. He became an icon of pop culture straight away almost. But we had very long discussions about whether we should actually activate the most interesting man in the world in the digital space. Because actually, when you think about it, you could not have created a more technologically averse character if you tried. So we spent a lot of time trying to figure out how we could activate this guy. The second key reason was actually selecting the right channels. And the great thing about the digital space was that you can really select how and where you want to activate. We believe to this day that the very last thing the most interesting man in the world would do would be to tweet or post on Facebook. He is far too busy doing other things, such as talking French in Russian. So, to this day, you'll never see the most interesting man in the world either tweet or post anything on Facebook, and we've kept to that since day one. I think the third most interesting reason, the third reason why we didn't screw it up, is because actually for us, it's not just about the MIM. As we said before, our belief on Dos Equis is that we want to help consumers to lead much more interesting lives. And while the most interesting man in the world can help inspire people to do that, our job really is to try and help consumers to do that on a day-to-day level. So what we've done is to activate in the digital space many other ideas outside of the most interesting man in the world. The example that we've got up there is the Dos Equis taco truck, which tweeted its way around New York last May and gave consumers the opportunity to enjoy some very memorable and interesting taco recipes. I don't know how many of you here had tried the cricket tacos or the cow's tongue tacos. If you did, I'm sure you remember them, and you'll be able to tell your friends about how interesting that meal was. So moving on to the fourth reason, making difficult choices. And this seems so simple when you look back on it 3 or 4 years with hindsight, but we'd spent a lot of time and money investing in DosEquis.com. But what we realized was pretty early on was that Facebook was actually a much better vehicle for us. So very quickly, we actually changed our focus and moved into Facebook for our key moment of activation. And I actually think of all of these things, it's probably the decision or the thing that we're most proud of, that we actually, you know, had the guts to take the decision to say, hey, we're going to move away from something we've spent a lot of time and effort and emotional kind of investment into. Reason number 5. Give consumers a soapbox. This is really important, giving consumers a voice. I think David talked about it before. We had a really simple idea, and that was just to let consumers give us their lines at the most interesting man in the world, or their legend lines for the most interesting man in the world. It's really great when you get a chance to talk to consumers and how good they feel when they tell you, when we talk to them in focus groups and everything, hey, I posted a line on Facebook. It's really good for them and makes them feel part of the brand conversation. As you can see up there, some of them are really good. I think the one about greatest hits is probably one of my favorites. Some of them are absolutely dreadful. Not the ones up there, but I can tell you we have some really awful ones. But we put them all up there because we want everybody to be part of the conversation. So that was another reason. I think moving on as well, relevant content fuels their passion. I think the real message here is that we had a really good idea and consumers were really getting into it with posting their lines, but you have to continually refresh and update. And we've probably got 6 or 7 programs this year that we've put up, whether it be our experiential programs or other things that consumers can actually vote on the favorite lines that consumers have put up there. But you've got to keep refreshing, you've got to keep it new and different, otherwise the consumer will very quickly disengage. I think coming up to the next one is listen and learn. So a little story that I don't think we've ever made public, but back in 2009, as our Facebook page was just kicking off, we had the brilliant idea to host a party in Houston, which is one of our key markets. It was a very simple idea. We invite 1,500 people. They have a fantastic time. They go out. They tell all their friends about it. Plan seemed pretty simple. That was until 3,000 people turned up. It was 4 miles from the center of the city, very little transportation back. And of those 3,000 people, 10 were from the local fire department, and I think another 10 were from the local police department, who very quickly shut us down. 3,000 very upset consumers. You can imagine what happened next. Pretty much, I think, a world record number of Facebook groups and posts about dissatisfaction with the brand. So what could we do? Well, we actually used digital to respond. And what we did was that we got in contact with everybody that had posted negative comments about the brand, and we shared with them our action plan for how we were going to put things right. And I think, you know, very soon afterwards, we were able to make everybody who had a really bad experience of the brand just understand that we cared about them and we cared about making this right. So that was a really good example for us of using the digital space in a way that we actually hadn't ever planned to do. So hopefully you found those reasons fairly interesting. I think if you all sum them up, very similar to what David was saying before, you've really just got to be true to yourself and understand what your brand is and what your voice is and really be very consistent with that, because digital is just another medium for your conversation to move forward. So I hope you've enjoyed that, and I think we're going to leave with a little film, but otherwise, thanks for listening, and as always, my friends, stay thirsty.
There's a place you can go to meet new people. It's called a bar. Stay thirsty, my friends.
Kirsten Mitten-Rivas and Colin Westcott-Pitt. I wish that every one of our experiences had a what we did wrong and how we fixed it bit. Don't you think? Because, I mean, there's a lot of people who come up here and say, we got 41 million impressions and 14,000 people loved us, and blah, blah, blah. But to go up there and explain how another part of advertising is picking up the mistake and handling the failure and bringing it back alive, and how do you communicate the brand, I mean, I think that speaks just as much to this as coming up with the most interesting man. which, by the way, your three-letter acronym, MIM, so being not from the ad industry, I've heard so many like AOR and stuff like that that I always have to like spell it in my head. So it's like MIM, and Jack says, most interesting man, duh. I'm not fast sometimes. Speaking of which, I'm going to bring up Michelle Evans, who is the online social media and business development manager for 4Ingredients. Michelle's come all the way from Australia, and as I said earlier, if you don't understand her, later I'll translate everything she said into proper English. There's a buttoner thing, but you are on number 3. So is that your box right there?
That'll be here.
This one, Michael's? You can use Michael's if you want.
It's all right. He's more interesting. Is there a clicker?
There is a clicker. It's this one.
Okay, sorry, it was on. Oh, here we go. They've changed
Ah, there we go.
Very tricky.
We have a lot of boxes up here.
We do, yeah.
Hooray. Here, let's do this. I will move the most interesting laptop in the right over there. I'll also move the water away from all the electronics.
Great idea.
That's why I'm in technology. Michelle Evans, ladies and gentlemen.
Hi, how are you? As Chris said before, there is a film, so if you can't understand me, there is subtitles. And he also does sign language. I do a different sign language, but it's only when Qantas goes on strike. So, how do you follow beer? Not really sure. Who's an expert in Facebook? Not me. I got the job at 4Ingredients because I was the only person in the whole company that had a Facebook account, so that makes me an expert. And how did we decide that? We have a race every year called the Melbourne Cup. I don't know if anyone's heard of it. So we decided to go to the pub where we had multiple Dos Equis, and I lost. So adding to my many other duties, I got Facebook. So we thought we'd go and Google who are the gurus, and all these really interesting people came up on Google and on Facebook. And we decided there really isn't any experts, you just have to find your own voice. So what we're talking about today, if I could just see the slide myself, is to know your market. So we already had a pretty successful brand. Who are we? We have the #1 selling self-published book in Australian and New Zealand history. And why we did it self-published is no one said we're not chefs, we're not cooks, we're actually from finance. Your book doesn't have any pictures. In fact, your recipes look crap. So, yeah, we'll pass up on that. But Kim, the founder, the author, the creator and inspiration for this whole business, didn't take no for an answer. She's a very clever lady, and she thought, no, I'll self-promote that. So she found her voice offline, and as a result, got a TV show in 24 countries and 6 languages. And our whole operation is 4 people in a place called Caloundra. Now, Caloundra is known for the newlywed and the newly dead. So the most creative we do get is at the Pelican Waters Tavern, which is where I got this job. So, how we started our Facebook page 12 months ago. We looked at our budget. I had $5. I just paid school fees, so I wasn't paying for it. So we've built our whole page on Earnt. We have not paid for a Facebook page or Facebook ad yet, but we're just about to, because we have positioned ourselves for what this fantastic new space called affiliate marketing on Facebook. They were talking about, I think in the earlier session, about the little section on the right with the Facebook ads. That's called an annoyance or annoying little ad. It's trying to get in that broader area in the middle. We're very good at affiliate marketing as it is with key brands in Australia, so we've positioned ourselves to do that really well on social media. So we go and ask people why they like the page, and we're really stupid, so we just went on our page and said, why do you like our page? It's that simple, okay? We don't have a marketing budget, so to work out how to use Facebook really well, we just go and see what our competitors that do it really well do it, replicate it, and find our own voice. And of course, because I come from finance, I love data, I love insights, and as you'll see from that, from a very small country, working out of my kitchen, we have over 94% engagement. So if you're not sure how your fans are using their Facebook, ask. And this is really, really important, not just in Australia but around the world. More and more people, including my 14-year-old, uses their iPhone to access Facebook. So what you post has to be relevant to the space that they're receiving their information. Content is king. And if you go back to the first slide and you discuss, okay, why do you like our page? If they are on your page for food, talk about food and everything around food. Don't go on there and talk about how you got cut off in traffic. Don't go in there and talk about, you know, things that are happening in general society because you are just going to clog their news feeds. As it was said in the first session with Sony, you have to ask permission when it's a business page. On your personal page, you can talk about whatever you want. There are rules with Facebook when you are a business page. So adjust your posts accordingly so they can access your content fast. People want things instantly. We're in an instant gratification society. So if a lot of them are getting your content with a phone, just a short post. If you do have a YouTube message to support that, just let them know that you do. But there's nothing more annoying with Australian telcos trying to download content or video content on a phone. It's frustrating. I disengage. I go on to the next news feed. And of course, use all your platforms wise, but be consistent. Say the same things, hook it all in, use great apps like, you know, whatever you liked. TwitterDeck, Hootsuite, some great white label applications like Post-it Planner, whatever you think is appropriate. Actively engage your audience with every post. So for the first 3 lines, I always ask a question because I want them to comment. When someone comments, I always like their comment, even if they said something not very nice. And where possible, I always answer their questions. If I'm going to ask a question, expect them to answer it, I'm going to answer it as well. Okay? Get them engaged, get them involved in the conversation. And repetition is reputation. So use the same terms, phrases and tone with every post, no matter what your media. This is really important. If you have a Facebook team, we don't, I'm the whole team, then you want to be consistent with the way you interact with your users. We have what we call, on our Facebook family, stalkers. They actually call themselves the 4-ingredient stalkers, not us. And they come to every event, every book launch, and they're highly engaged that they find out, we tell them up front when we're going to release a book, and they start the countdown, even if it's 300 days out. And they count down 300, 299, all the way down. By the time the book comes out, it's a bestseller. And it really does work. So marketing budget, 0. This is just an example from last night. I had a whole lot of examples. If you can read that, you're doing better than I can. But then I'm old. So Tricia Chilcott-Priest, she's one of our raving stalkers, her term, not mine. She met another one of our stalkers who lives in Singapore. Tricia lives on the Sunshine Coast where we are. We've got this whole family, they connect. Tricia came to one of our events, had a picture taken with Kim. Cassandra in Singapore saw that online, took that photograph, framed it, posted it to Tricia in Australia and said, look what I found. She's come on, said, isn't that fantastic? That's a random act of kindness. I'm so happy. But we encourage that on our page because we then went on and thanked Cassandra for her random act of kindness and sent her a signed book of our latest book, the Christmas book, which you can't get in Singapore right now. That would have cost us $8 wholesale, but it's earned us a lot of business. So capture the audience at the right time. So we know our audience. They're busy mums and dads like us in the office. They tend to read their Facebook or the internet between 6 and 7 in the morning, Australian time, because that's when the kids are hopefully asleep. That's when they're getting a coffee. That's when they're catching up with their families and their friends. So we post then. And the other time we post is at 2:30 in the afternoon. And the reason is they're looking for inspiration. They're just about to go and get the kids from school. They're either going to go to the supermarket on the way to school or on the way back. We give them the inspiration of what to cook for dinner. And you'd be surprised how many then come on 2 hours later with a picture with them and what we've just posted and telling us how much they liked it. You can't hug and share a product more than that. And supermarkets love us for that, because all of a sudden we've sold their tomato soup that's on special, or zucchini on special. Our whole page is about saving time and money. And being a trained economist, I think for the next 10 to 15 years I've got a really good niche on the market, because no one has money at the moment. So if we can help them out, then we've added value, which is our key goal. Okay, allocate block timers to post if you're using apps. I only use apps, to be honest, when I'm flying 23 hours across the other side of the world, which this is the 4th time this year, and then I'm back home for 2 days and then off to the UK. So I'll be using apps a little bit for the next 2 months. But they are very, very useful. And always plan your posts around special events. It's not reactive, it's proactive. So like any great marketing campaign, you would have a calendar generally, and you would have special events that relate to your product. We post around that, and we try and get in first, engage the excitement around it. And answer as many questions, just repeating that again. Actively update your knowledge of Facebook, Twitter and Google+. I've seen some really fantastic pages being taken down because they didn't comply with competition rules in particular, and because they were deemed to be spamming the news feed. So be very, very careful about that. It's free, but it's a lot of hard work, as you would all know. And if you're using sweepstakes, do it the right way. Social media isn't exactly self-promotion. The page belongs to your audience, so just remember that. Don't product flog. If they ask you a question, answer it, of course. Groom your audience. People come to pages because they want to feel a part of something. You know, the word connected is used a lot, but we give them exclusive deals, sneak peeks. We might give them a recipe here and there from a new book before somebody else. We make them feel special, but the clever thing, and Kim has done this before we even went online, is she's very clever in that she gets the audience to write the recipes. And then she gets their permission to print those recipes, and she puts their name and lights in a best-selling book. We're getting the content from our audience. We're lazy. We live near the beach. We love surfing. When we get, more importantly, golf. But when you take on the job of social media, your handicap goes up. Engage, educate, and reward your Facebook family. Set the tone and repeat it. We have what we call random acts of kindness constantly, and this is a way to work with the competition rules. It is completely random. It's not all the time, but we give things away to people that we think deserve it, that have worked hard on our page to educate our other family members about our product, where to get it, and the best price. Setting the tone, just at our welcome page. When you come to our page, you have to go into the welcome tab. We think this is really important, and I think this is why our engagement is high. We set the tone, so if you come in here and you don't like what Kim says in the 30-minute trailer about what this page is all about, you don't need to like us, you can move on. Okay? Brand ambassadors, or what I'm called is the social media Nazi. You need to really be tight over the control of your social media. It's becoming all media. Okay, so whoever's looking after your social media or digital media needs to know your products, your brand, your strategy back to front, live and breathe it, and even if they're tired or been working 7 days, the message has to be the same. It has to be consistent. But more importantly, again, because we're lazy, make your Facebook family members ambassadors. And we appoint ambassadors. We send them aprons signed, and we appoint them the brand ambassadors for the week. And we're really big on football jerseys and things like that in Australia. So we get them to then, when their stint is finished, sign the apron, pass it on to the next brand ambassador, and then we hang that apron up at the end of the year in the office, and they're known as our 4 Ingredients brand ambassadors for the year. So there's a random act of kindness there, another one. They go on and on and on and on. And it's all about turning likes into love, and the more involved they feel, the more they feel they own the page, the more they're going to sell it. So if we flick through, what does this mean? Well, 4 people, budget of nothing. Our online growth as a result of Facebook, Twitter and YouTube has grown 411% in 12 months. 94% monthly active engagement for Facebook alone. Our online sales have increased 233% in the same period, directly correlated to Facebook. We have a checkout survey to find out where you heard about the product. 1 in every 7 homes in Australia and New Zealand now has our books, which is sensational. Our PR and marketing spend is time, not money, and we provide content. And it's flipped. As a result of our success online, we are now in over 100 APN publications around Australia and New Zealand, where we give them a quarter-page ad, essentially, content, a recipe with our Facebook symbol, and they post that in all of those publications Monday to Friday, and they pay us for the content, not the other way around. Whenever you buy a Sony Bravia now in Australia, our YouTube channel is embedded. Glenn, who is our director, our Steven Spielberg, we learnt this, again, we tossed a coin and decided he would do it. So we went to the equivalent of your Home Depot, got 2 $30 electrician lights, bought a $150 Kodak ZI-8 camera, and that's when we started filming. And we've just secured actually another 2 countries for our cable TV and signed free-to-air TV in Australia, and within the next couple of months with probably one of the largest TV entities in America for free-to-air TV in the USA. And a lot of that has been keeping the audience engaged, educated and involved. My name's Michelle. If you want to have any questions, you can ask me afterwards. Thank you.
Michelle Evans, ladies and gentlemen. Z is actually Z in our country, so she meant the Kodak ZI-8. I loved a lot of that. The whole part about, you know, considering it. Did you notice that there were more words like family and more words about how we built a relationship around people, and less words like drive, harness, activate, push, engage, shove, or squeeze? It was mostly about giving love to them and making them, you know, the star of the show. And I think that's what Dave covered. I think that's what, you know, Colin and Kirsten said in their sort of extended plan is it's not about the most interesting man in the world, it's about the people around it. So that's definitely kind of a lesson for how social works on this, is that, you know, we grew up in a society of, you know, the person on the screen was never us, the person on the screen never related to us, and now we have the tools to actually make the bridge and make that relationship feeling where we feel like we're part of the story, we're not just, you know, another edge of it. So last up, and certainly not least in any way, is my friend Michael Pranikoff from PR Newswire. Why bring a PR guy to an advertising event? Well, it turns out that, 1, I like Michael, and 2, it's because this whole stalactite, stalagmite thing of, you know, this is advertising, this is paid, this is earned, and all that has changed. And I think Michael's got a great way of talking about that. And if, because of your trade, you haven't really had to do much inside of the world of PR Newswire, you'd be a little surprised from what you think of the company and what's gone on since. So I wanted to drag Michael into that story. So without any more, Michael Pranikoff.
Great. Thank you very much. So I'm with PR Newswire. For those of you who have not ever worked with PR Newswire, or maybe haven't thought about working with PR Newswire in a long time, we are one of the world's largest content distribution companies. But as Chris said, what is a PR guy doing here? And you know, what a PR guy is doing here is that today, you know, everything that's going on with communications, how brands, how corporations, how, you know, even nonprofit organizations, politics, how we're communicating the message that we need to communicate today, it's a really important thing. But the reason why PR guy is here is because it's not just about marketing and advertising. So what we're seeing happen today more and more is the streaming of the brand. We're seeing that brands, regardless of what kind of brand you are, a B2B brand, a B2C brand, we're streaming the brands out to various locations more so than ever before. And one quick thing I should mention, that the hardest thing about being the last speaker is, 1, some of what you've said is already, or what you have to say has already been said, and the other thing is that you also have to speed up. So, you know, one of the things that we start seeing is the streaming of the brand. We see this happening more and more, but we see this happen everywhere. the Facebook likes. We see the signs. Everybody like us, add us, follow us, Twitter us, etc. Watch us. But here's the question that we have to think about. Why? Why should somebody like you? Why should somebody follow you? Unfortunately, not enough of that explanation ever happens. So what is somebody going to get by following you? What is someone going to get by liking you and taking a part of your brand and wanting to receive your messages in their Facebook feed? So we know there's all these different statistics about how many people out there generally like a brand on Facebook or follow a brand on Twitter. And I'm sure if I asked everybody in the audience today, right now, how many of you like a brand, most of your hands will go up. How many of you follow a brand, most of your hands will go up. But we're not talking about the advertising and marketing community. We're talking about general people here. So we have to ask that question, is why should they follow us? And we have to give that answer to them. So we see this happening, and we see even media is incorporating their ways into Facebook. We see that we're utilizing to stream the brands in a lot of different ways. It's an example of how USA Today, really Gannett, is taking all of their different brands and putting it onto places like Paperly. But we see different ways that you can do your Facebook tabs, of course, all of those different things that are being talked about in all of the different sessions today. But in reality, people don't want to like, they want to love. And that's the truth. They don't want to just like your brand, because when we think about, why does someone share, retweet, reshare the content that you put up? It's not because they like your brand. It's because they like their friends. And that's why, when we think about putting the content up there, it's not about like, it's how can we make somebody love us? And so as we think about that, the problem is that our marketing departments often look like this. The marketing, the advertising, the PR, and everybody's struggling for that social media land grab. I've been into about 3 or 4 companies just in the last 2 weeks, and there's constant arguing about who has control over social media. Is it marketing? Is it PR? How does the advertising fit into the conversation? And we see this tug of war that's going on. In reality, here's the question. Where's the beef? Best advertising campaign that I remember from my childhood. And why was it the best? Because it essentially gave you what that message is. It told you right away, you knew exactly what they were trying to say. And here's the problem. The fighting that's going on between marketing and PR and the struggle of our brands, what's happening, this is what's getting lost. It's about the message. It's not about how many likes you have. Great, you had 500 likes. Okay, what's the ROI on that? Great, you've had this message retweeted 15 times. Wonderful. Okay, that's fleeting. So it all comes back down to what is that message that you're trying to get across. And then we take that message, and then we filter that message out through the different tools like Facebook, like Twitter, and then we utilize what that essential message is to then speak with our audience, not to our audience. So we take these different things, but at the end of the day, it all comes back to the message, and all the different tools that we utilize, advertising, marketing, PR, Facebook, Twitter, Google+, etc., reinforce what that initial message is. So as we see the paradigm shift that's happening in communications of paid, owned, and earned, and all of those really quickly moving together, well, that's exactly what has to happen with our different departments. And we see that we have more access to consumers, the continuous messaging, but that's the important thing, continuous messaging, but always being surely and focused on what that message is. So as we see this, everybody loves a good story. And that's the thing that we have to think about, is what is that story that we're trying to tell, and make sure that they love that story, that that story resonates with our audiences, and that it connects back to essentially what our message is. If you want to go and engage, sorry Chris, I used the word, but if you want to engage your audiences, you have to give them something that they want to hear, and everybody loves that good story. They don't want your brand message just flashed at them. They want to know how this affects their lives. So we start thinking about, everybody wants that good story. Well, we also have to think about this. How can somebody find your good story? And so it's my belief that, the foundation of social media is actually search. Because before somebody can go and take your message and share your message and like your message, they have to first be able to find your message. And it's a really important thing to think about that search and how this all connects together, because 39% of search users link search prominence to how they feel about the company. So if they can't find your content and your information when they're looking for it, they're definitely not going to be able to share it. But the more that they can find your content, the more they are more likely to have a better feeling about your organization. And then, hopefully, if you're telling a good enough story, and that's really, they like your story, they're then going to engage, and they're going to go ahead and like, and they're going to share and love what you have to say. So what we start seeing today is more of this, which is more of like agile engagement. So taking some of the ideas of what's been happening in terms of, agile development process that has been going on in development for software, but now how do we apply that to how we communicate as a brand today? And we do that today by making sure that we're following these ideas and reiterating that process over and over. Listen, analyze, strategize. We've heard these different things, but now we actually have to take this all together with that message that we're trying to get across, and constantly refocus ourselves, constantly looking at and listening to our audiences and seeing what is working, what's not working, how can we tweak this, and how does it connect then with our message. It's that process now of taking agile software development and applying to agile communications and agile engagement. So I want to show an example of this at work. So Audi, earlier this year, back last in February, January and February, when we had those bad East Coast winter storms, which hopefully that's not what's going to happen this year. But Audi, when they were listening online, and they saw this video get posted by a blogger. Whoops. And sound's not working. Okay. Let's try this again. Hold on a second. Just a second. Let's try this one. There we go. No, that's not what we wanted. Let's just try. Well, okay, forget that. We'll just keep going. But what happened is that they saw this blogger. And this blogger was going out and talking in the snowstorms and was saying, okay, I'm going to test out and see how my Audi R8 Quattro is going to work in the snowstorm. Now, that's a brave thing if you've ever seen that car. And if you remember the snowstorms last year. So basically, he went and he took this out there. He took and posted his Quattro going out on the road and going through snowbanks and just performing just fine on the road, showing cars that were stranded, and the only other cars that were moving was his Audi R8 and a number of other trucks on the road. Well, he posted that up, and this started to catch wind in the blogosphere, started getting taken up by other auto blogs, and because Audi was listening, and they saw these numbers, in 3 weeks' time, they were able to turn this around. And in 3 weeks' time, they turned that around, and they put it actually into an advertisement. And again, I don't. Oh.
Race yourself, New York. Thousands of cars stuck now on British Road Drive are literally just parked. Usually close the interstates in Iowa. 10,000 flights have been canceled due to heavy snowfall. You do not want to be out there today, folks.
So they took that piece directly from the guy who posted it up onto YouTube. And in 3 weeks' time, they said they had seen that over 599,000 hits in 3 weeks. They went and took that information. They went and they brought it into their own advertising campaign. And they brought that out into their advertising campaign not because it was, getting a lot of popularity online. They did it because it actually reinforced the message that they were trying to say. It reinforced the message of how well their car drove. And because they knew that message that they were trying to enforce, they looked for other people talking that message and then utilized that, analyzed that, and were agile enough to 3 weeks get this up on the air. So it's all about taking that content that we have and making that content directional today. And so, great, you have your Facebook page, you've got your Twitter feed, you've got all of these different things, but where do you want people to go after they've read that piece? What do you want them to do? And that's where you start connecting all of those pieces back to where you're trying to drive them. If you're just trying to drive them, somewhere online, great. But if you're trying to drive them offline, well, think, are you giving them actionable items? So it's all about the message. Thank you.